In the last video, we looked at nouns, and we asserted that all subjects and objects are going to be nouns. And there are three types of objects that we're going to look at in these videos, and that really help you at your beginning stages of learning a foreign language on your own. Direct object, indirect object, and object of the preposition. Okay. Now, there is another situation that can be in play here in the clause where you have another noun that's not an object and not a subject. So let's talk about complements. All right, complements. A compliment, not a compliment with an I, which is a nice word to somebody, but a complement with an E is that which completes the thing it is a complement of. So it's sharing more information about another noun in the clause. So complements always pair up. They're going to pair up with another noun, and they're going to give you more complete information of that noun. Okay. The thing about a complement is that they depend on either an explicit or implicit to be verb, between itself and the noun it is complementing. Okay. And the to be verb is going to be a copula, which is technically called a copula. You're perfectly okay thinking of it in terms of an equal sign. Okay. Let me give you an example. The child is Henry's daughter. Okay. So what's the verb there? Well, it's is, because that's the word that changes as you move that collection of words through time. The child was Henry's daughter. The child is Henry's daughter. The child will be Henry's daughter. So is. Who or what is? According to the collection of words you have there, it's very quickly the child is, right? That's your answer. That's the answer that's given to you. So that's your subject. The subject is the child. The verb is. Now, if you then take that formula, the next formula question that we use to find the direct objects, right? The child is who or what, you do get an answer, Henry's daughter. However, in this case, that is something that we do not call a direct object. Okay, so if you go back to the video about objects, you realize that I quickly made it a little caveat saying, hey, there's going to be one exception coming. And here it is. Okay, the answer to the child is who or what, the subject verb who or what question to get the direct object. In this case is Henry's daughter, the child is Henry's daughter. But because you can see that the is, the to be verb between the two, or what we would call the linking verb, okay, because sometimes it's not technically an is verb. It could be something else. I'll explain that later. But that is acting as an equal sign. The child equals Henry's daughter. And if that's the case, if there's an equal sign hanging around in there, then what you have on the other end of the verb is what we call a complement. Now, because this complement shoots back over the verb to hit the subject, we call it the subject complement. Okay, so the subject complement is something you're going to run into, and it's also a noun. All complements are nouns. Okay, so the child is Henry's daughter. This car is Ford's newest product. Okay, do you see the equal sign? Okay, so you have subject, this car, verb is, and then this is not a direct object. It's Ford's newest product is actually a subject complement, right? Giving you more information about the subject. In fact, giving you more information so that in this sense, there is an equal sign happening. Now, sometimes the equal sign means a direct, identity. Sometimes it's one side is not directly identical to the other, but is included in the identity. Okay, for example, the car that Ford has, the car is green. Okay, we're not going to look at that. There is an equal sign happening there, right? The car equals green, but that sentence is not saying the car is green color, like capital G, capital C, like the abstract notion of greenness. No, we're just saying the car has the color green. So we're actually saying the car is a green car. Okay, that's why I say there is an equal sign there. But here's where I would differ with other grammarians, and I want to say this because if you're taking these videos seriously and trying to learn this taxonomy, you might say, well, Matt just called that a noun, but other grammar books are calling it a predicate adjective. And what's going on here? Okay, well this is what happens. Okay, notice that we're talking about elements that happen in the predicate, right? Because for that clause to be the clause, you need the main verb and the subject. Now, everything else that's if you want to draw a dividing line there, that's fine. But everything else that's related to that clause, but is on the verb side, it belongs to the predicate. Okay, so the predicate can extend past the verb. That's why for many videos up to this point, I've always kind of hemmed and hawed and semi-apologized for my sloppy use of subject and predicate. And then I would say subject and main verb and subject, because there could be more to a predicate than just a main verb, right? The predicate is just everything that's related to the subject, main verb always included. Okay, so the complement here is going to be in the predicate. Now, because it's shooting back over and pointing towards the subject, we call it the subject complement. And it's really easy to see this if we're talking about things that are obviously nouns. Okay, for example, let's say the gift is a puzzle. Okay, well, gift is subject verb. Puzzle goes back to equate to the gift. That's your complement because it's equating to the subject. It's your subject complement. There's no problem there. We can easily see that in that case, a puzzle is a noun. However, if I were to say the car is green, because of the logic of this, if I'm going to put that in a complementary spot, green, and if I'm going to say that it is flipping back over the verb to give you more information of the subject, then I want to call that a subject complement. But you have this other rule at play that says all complements are nouns. So all of a sudden I have the word green to be a noun, right, in this situation. I'm okay with it, but you're going to get a lot of books that would like to introduce a new word because they're not really comfortable with a color like that in a descriptive function, right? Green describing the car. They want to call that an adjective, right? So that's why they'll say this is a predicate adjective. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. Do what you want to. Now you just introduce more terms. I'm completely okay with calling it a noun. And we do it quite often when we refer to it as a color, qua color, like green is my favorite color. Whatever it is, boom, it's a noun, see? So anyway, you have your subject complements. Now, what happens when in the predicate you have your object sitting there, whether it's indirect or direct, although, I think that indirect object complementation is quite rare. It's usually the direct object that gets a complement. So sometimes complements can actually give you more information about an object. And they're sitting there next to each other, and there's this quiet, invisible equal sign between the two. That's why at the beginning of this video I said that equal sign, if you will, is going to be either explicit, clearly there, or it's going to be implied. Here's an example. We voted Jerry the president, the club president or whatever. You see what I'm saying? What's the verb? Voted. Who voted? We. There's the subject. We voted who or what? Jerry. Is Jerry a subject complement there? If it is, then it's being equated by the copula is to the subject. Is that sentence actually saying we are Jerry? No, right? Voted is not acting as an equal sign there. So Jerry there is not a complement. In fact, it's a direct object. We voted Jerry. Subject, verb, direct object. But between Jerry and the class president or the club president or whatever, there is an equation that is being drawn. And both of those are nouns. So that's when you have a complement that is coming after the direct object and it's actually identifying the direct object. We call that the object complement. Okay, so really those are the two kind of complements I want us to know: subject complement, object complement. And they're always going to be involved with this equal sign. Sometimes the equal function is going to be direct and total. One completely equals the other. Sometimes it's more of here's an attribute that we are saying equates to part of the makeup of this. So that's a little bit of a stretch there, but it really does help when you're trying to find complements to think in terms of that equal sign. Just remember that sometimes the equation is actually linking a smaller part to a bigger part. Like the car is green, you know, versus the car is a vehicle. You see what I'm saying? Now, sometimes the linking verb there is not always going to be, it's going to be different from a to be verb, right? It's not always going to be an is or a was or a, right? It could be Jason feels sick. Okay? All right. So the word feels there does not mean that, as he touches things, he touches them in a sick way. Like, you're touching this book and you're like, oh, the touching action is sick. No. That's not what that is saying. That the feel there is not a verb that is actually speaking about receiving sensation through your skin. It's acting like an equal sign. Jason equals sick today, right? And in fact, we're leaving out the full version of the noun there. We're saying Jason is a sick man. We know it's temporal. That's how come we like to use the word feel, and because that more clearly expresses the temporary movement of this sort of feeling sick. We don't hesitate at all to say you are sick when we know, but I'm getting distracted here. Jason feels sick, okay? Because there is an equal sign there to the idea of Jason equals a sick man today, I would say sick is in a complementary action there, going back to the subject. I would call sick, in that case, a subject complement. I would actually call it a noun, and then I would have to say that feels is a linking verb, okay? Because in this case, it's not talking about the act of perception with your fingers. It's talking about a state of being. And it's making this equation between Jason and this state of being, right? And so sometimes the subject complements can take on a little bit of a more challenging form, a little bit harder to recognize. But as you practice, as you go online, just Google subject complements, examples of, ask AI for this. You're going to get plenty of examples. You're going to see how it works in English. You're going to get stronger with your understanding of how English works here. You can take that knowledge into Latin or Greek or Hebrew or whatever you're doing, and you can find the indirect objects. And in this case, the complements, okay? So this closes up the video for complements. Just to quickly review, for the purposes here that we have for these videos and for your work beginning to teach yourself a foreign language, I would say it's going to be a lot easier for you if you just realize that you don't have to define a noun as a person, place, or thing. That's very weak. Move it, get rid of it. Define a noun as subjects, complements, and objects. All right? That's has helped me quite a bit, and I recommend it highly. All right, thank you for watching.